What's up, everybody? Welcome to kind of a new maybe series if you guys want it, if you guys like it. But welcome to my biased opinion. Yes. So, in these episodes, I'm going to give you my biased opinion on certain subjects, whether that be sports in this case, politics, life, news, whatever. You know, that's just going from the top of my head. If you want to hear my opinion on something. So I'm going to kick it off with the Packers versus Seahawks NFC Championship game. And why I think the Packers will win, based obviously off of my biased opinion. So everybody wants to compare the first game of the season, Seattle, on September 4th. And here's what you should take away from that game compared to now. So I have 5 reasons why I think the Packers can win the game. So let's kick it off. Number 1, this is not week 1. This is week 20. And albeit we got crushed in the first game, but you must remember that the Packers, which play 4 rookies exclusively now, had these players still basically green. They're wet behind the ears. You know, you had Devontae Adams, who was a stud last game. Corey Linsley, who's been a beast at the center position. That was his first game started. Richard Rodgers, the tight end who caught the winning touchdown last weekend. And Clinton Dix, the new safety corner we brought in. He's been playing very well, and now he's like a staple, especially in the nickel defense. So, with those 4 coming in and a season under their belt, and I remember the big play against Gronkowski against the Patriots, where Clinton Dix had his arm in there, knocked it out, and that ended up sealing the game because then they missed the field goal. Brady's on the sideline screaming his head off, as everybody saw, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And then, like I said, Adams good, and then Linsley, like, that leads me to point number 2 with Corey Linsley. The Packers have the best O-line for Rodgers in his career. I remember 2 years ago when we played on the Fail Mary game, he got sacked 8 times in the first half. He was sacked like 70 times that year. While Rodgers has only been sacked 28 times all year long and he was sacked once last game, so that's technically 29. So 29 sacks through 17 games. That is very impressive. Very impressive. And there's games where he had no sacks on him, where he was standing back there reading War and Peace like for 10 seconds, looking for somebody that's open. I mean, he's never had this type of protection in his career, and it's been amazing, especially against the Cowboys and the Lions, like the last 2 teams that they played. You know, Dallas knew he was hampered, and then they gave up on the blitz in the second half, and he just torched them. And then Detroit knew he was hampered, and he still torched them. And they have a very physical front 4. Very physical. Probably one of the best front 4s in the league. And Seattle has only gotten 37 sacks this year on defense. And that's just a regular season. I didn't see what they did against Carolina because it doesn't matter. Carolina's not that good. Cam Newton's not that good. So, you got to think. 37 sacks, unless they're just playing like press coverage the entire time, because they played just marginal, below average quarterbacks for the last like 6-7 weeks. And they've been going on some impressive run and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, there's no QB that they face that has a rating above like 88. I think Sanchez had a quarterback rating of 88. Every other one has been below that. So, okay, yeah, you're allowing, 10 points a game over the last 7 games, but you're not facing anybody, dude. You're not facing anybody. I mean, the toughest test they had all year as far as QB was Romo. Besides Rodgers in the first week, and that was just terrible. The game plan was terrible. But Romo, he managed the game. They ran it with Murray, crushed him. That game wasn't even close. The scoreboard is close now, but Dallas physically owned Seattle in CenturyLink Field. And I think the Packers can do that as well with their O-line. And also with point number 3, Eddie Lacy. I know he's listed on the injury report with a sore knee this week. And he had asthma issues last week. after he trucked the Cowboys in the first quarter. But it's not going to be 15 degrees out in Seattle. It's a temperate rainforest. They're going to be like 40 degrees, 45 degrees, rainy. You know, it's going to be a noon game. So overcast probably, because that's their weather out there. So asthma won't be a problem. I know when it gets really cold and you try to run, my wife has it. It's just tough on her lungs, tough on, you know, her and her bronchitis. It just flares up. So based on that, he has to be a beast this week. He was a beast in the first game of the season against Seattle until he got knocked out right away with a concussion. And I mean, that just changed the entire game plan. Now, with the best O-line that we've had, he has been averaging about 4.7 yards a carry over the last like 7-8 games. I mean, that's DeMarco Murray's average. He had the most rushing yards over the last 7 games of the season compared to anybody. And if he's physical in the first quarter, they get that lead. He gets like 25 carries and you pound the ball. You know, you work Rodgers, get some first downs when you need to on third down, and you get the early lead. I think it's going to be tough for Seattle to win, especially if Lacy is averaging 4 yards a carry. Which, I mean, he's going to have his short runs, but look at last week. He had some huge runs against Dallas. Huge runs. And was just trucking them. Especially if he was still in the second quarter, it would be a different story leading into halftime, for sure. So, Lacy's got to be key. Also, this isn't talked about too much, but, you know, being battle hardened. Last year, the Seahawks came through the toughest division, very tough schedule, and 2 tough opponents in the NFC in New Orleans that put up a decent fight, and they had a good defense last year. This year, not so much. And then San Francisco, which is a very physical team, and they beat those teams, and then they get to Denver. And Denver, and my buddy laughed at me. He's like, oh yeah, Denver's a finesse team. I mean, they were. All these bubble screens and stuff like that with, you know, the defense is playing 10 yards off because they don't want to be over the, you know, get beat over the top, the corners, safeties. Like, with the coverage that Seattle plays and they're jamming people at the line, that's going to throw off timing, and you saw it right away. I mean, Manning was just off. Those bubble screens are getting blown up. Decker wasn't even in the game. He didn't even make a catch. I don't even know if he made the trip last year to the Meadowlands. Was it the Meadowlands? Yeah, I think it was in the Giants and Jets Stadium last year where the Super Bowl was held. You know, and they forced Manning to throw like deep out patterns, you know, in cuts, and he just doesn't have the arm strength as we saw this year. I mean, he was tearing it up early on, but look at the last 6 games. His arm, he can't make those throws. His leg was hampered, and he tried to rely on his arm. Oh no, it was not good. So, and that's why, you know, Indy beat him. They went physical, they stopped the timing, and Manning, you know, outside of the timing, he just couldn't make any plays. So, that being said, the Packers have had to face the Patriots, Buffalo, Detroit, Dallas in the last month and a half since Thanksgiving. Very physical teams. Very physical teams. Especially Dallas's O-line, you know, against our D-line. You know, that was a very physical offensive line. We were able to get strip sack, which we didn't recover. We had a couple sacks on Romo in that fourth quarter that helped us get the ball back and take the lead. Well, Seattle's had to face St. Louis and their great offense. The Cardinals with Lindley and Stanton and their great offense without Andre Ellington in there and Fitzgerald being out. And then the Panthers' great offense, which is probably the best offense they saw outside of the Philadelphia game. But, I mean, that's Mark Sanchez leading that. That was just, it ain't going to happen. And, you know, you had Kelvin Benjamin and catching 2 touchdowns and Olsen and, you know, John Stewart, who's doing all right. But, you know, Cam Newton led that team to a 7-8-1 record. Boy, what a juggernaut. You know, they're just awesome. They're lucky to even get in. I mean, that division was just terrible. The Packers crushed Carolina when they came to Lambeau. It was like 38-13 at half, and the game was over. So, the Packers team is the most physical team that we've had since 2010, in my opinion, when we made the run. And I've been saying it all year. If we have a middle of the road defense, like, you know, from 10 to 15th overall, they're going to be very tough to beat, even with Rodgers hobbled. And Rodgers, you forgot, he won 4 games on the road to win that Super Bowl. He went into Philly, he went into Atlanta, and he went into Chicago, all on the road. And then obviously he went, I forgot where that, oh yeah, it was in Jerry World. It was down to Dallas. And he just torched everybody through the playoffs. And had a very physical running back in Starks. You know, they're able to run the ball, get the lead early, and control the game, what they need to do. So the Packers are 4-4 away from home, and that's what people want to make a big deal about. They lost to New Orleans, Seattle, Detroit, and Buffalo. Outside of New Orleans, those are very physical teams. But they did beat Miami, who had a physical front. Tampa Bay didn't even show up. Minnesota is actually a very good team, and it will be probably 9-7, 10-6 next year if they get some good draft picks. And Chicago, obviously Chicago laid an egg. And Seattle lost to Dallas at home, which is easily the best team they faced in CenturyLink Field. And the rest of the season, they lost to the Rams, San Diego, and Kansas City on the road. Now, none of those teams made the playoffs. They're not the best teams. Kansas City really doesn't have much of an offense, and they still beat Seattle. They out-physicaled Seattle. The Rams, with Sean Hill, they don't have much of an offense, but they were able to beat them. San Diego, probably the best QB that they faced on the road, Phillip Rivers, and they beat him pretty handily, actually. So the only team that they lost to at home, the Packers just beat in Dallas, is basically what it boils down to. So you can throw in the 4-4 away from home record. You can throw in that they're a juggernaut at home. They're 9-0. You can throw in that Seattle's 7-1 at home. But the thing is, they were beat. They have been beat. And Dallas, you want to make a case because they're 8-0 on the road. I mean, that's fine. You want to make that case. But the Packers just beat that team when they were on the road. So let's let that sink in. And it sunk. And the last point I wanted to make, Packers, is not related to stats or ratings or strength of schedule. It's related to principle. The Seahawks have pushed the league around the NFC and, you know, the division that they face in the AFC for the last 2 years. And the only way to be the best is to beat the best. Obviously, you have to stand up to the bully on the block and knock them out. Teach them who is boss. Go in the CenturyLink Field. Come out with a drive. Get a touchdown. Run with Lacey. Enforce your will on the Seahawks. Don't limit the team to dump offs and short outs. You know, take that when you need to. Maybe a 2nd and 8 and get a short 6 yards so you have 3rd and short. Force them to play defense. Go deep. Force them to play defense. Force Richard Sherman to make plays and, you know, run his mouth. You know, make plays and shut him up. You have the MVP at the helm. Albeit he's injured, but he can still throw incredibly well, as you saw last weekend when he zipped that winning touchdown into Rodgers. Lacey is a beast. Get him in there with Kuhn leading the frontal assault. I mean, with Kuhn in the backfield last week on that first drive, and they threw it like one time, and Lacey was just gobbling up yards. Gobbling up yards. I mean, he was part turkey. He gobbled so much. And then on defense, you got to hold your gaps on defense to stop Lynch. You have to stop Lynch. You have to stop the running. You're averaging 180 yards on the ground per game. That's number 1 in the NFL. You hold them to 120. Force Russell Wilson to beat you through the air, to throw 250 yards and 2 TDs, to put up points. Make him do that. Like, I think they average maybe 210 yards throwing, something like that. I mean, he's had games where he's only thrown the ball like 12 times, 13 times, and they just ran all over the teams. So, make him beat you. run down the line of scrimmage when chasing Wilson. Don't run at him. Force him back to the middle. Force him back to the heart of your defense. Don't let him get outside. Don't let him break contain. And obviously, you got to get the lead early and keep it. And if they do that, they do all these things, and they don't have Percy Harvin anymore, who was very dynamic in that first game, I think the Packers will win this game. The score? I want to say 23-20. It will be a low-scoring game. Defenses, because, Seattle does not put up that many points. They honestly don't. So, you got to look at it that way. And the Packers are averaging 30 points a game. So, I think 23-20, Packers victory. And they will return to the Super Bowl this year. And they will face probably the Patriots. And based on those 5 reasons, I won't say facts because they're not facts, they're just judgments, is my biased opinion that the Packers will go to the Super Bowl and win it this year. So, that being said, let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what you think of the new show, which will come out periodically. Leave comments on, stuff you want me to rant about, on what do you think my opinion on something should be. And also subscribe and thumbs up if you have not done so already. So, we will see you next time in the next episode of My Biased Opinion. This is HarkDog25 signing out.